Drafting, a passionate that I love. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mischief from Laserforce, Loveland, Colorado. And I have been part of many drafts in Space Marines 5 members' night drafts, seasonal team drafts. I am a random draw champion from Random Draw 21 as the only player who took that draft super seriously. And I love drafting. I'm a big fantasy football player. Drafting is a game when you think about it. If you want to build a tournament where you have a bunch of different teams that are even, you probably don't want to draft, to be honest. You want to construct the teams manually, trying to assess and have the players agreed upon by a committee. But drafting is ultimately a way of building teams that is, it provides competitive equality of opportunity, meaning every captain, every team builder gets the same opportunity to build a great team, not necessarily access to the same players, not necessarily guaranteed that all the teams are going to look or be fair at the end, but more so, if you have a good team, it's because you had a good draft. You were wise and you made good calls on player value, and you got to the important positions before they all dried up. So drafting ultimately and selfishly is a really fun part of Space Marines 5 that I think is often included. And today I want to talk about some different drafting formats. I'm gonna be just honest. So there are different drafts for different purposes. If you're trying to do a for funsies tournament, a couple ideas for you. So blinded randomized teams. That's what happened at the most recent random draw. I think that's pretty fair. It's fair because everyone's getting the same advantages and disadvantages. Like there's going to be unfair picks. Like that randomized teams are where you put all the players into different tiers and then you randomize where they go so that it's fair-ish. It's non-competitive, removes the team synergy component. It's fine. Something I would propose as a potential alternative to this are visual randomized teams. So if you have your people making the teams, you make them all the captains, right? You build, if there are 6 captains, you build 6 teams, not including those captains, that all look reasonably fair. The captains can bicker and disagree and move players around until everybody is somewhat in agreement. Yeah, all these teams look about equal. And then the captains get randomized onto those teams. So they have full incentive to make the teams look as fair as possible because they don't know which one they're going to get placed on. That, I think, is one of the best ways to not only allow it the same intentionality of the randomized teams, but you can include team synergy. You can put people you can have different scout and resupply mains on teams and try to account for certain playstyle variabilities. Now, in terms of a competitive draft, which is what I'm kind of getting at, like we got 6 captains and they all want to win the tournament, right? I would say point buy. I'm gonna be honest. Point buy really makes me upset. I don't like point buy, and the reason is, if I were doing that, I'd be rewarded for contacting the most underpriced players before the other captains have an opportunity to do it. It's not fair to every captain. Some people quickly form super teams in the past, and at the same time, part of the fun of drafting is that my opinion, the captain, is the one that matters most, not the opinion of the committee that set the point values, right? If I happen to believe in a player, and I'm willing to reach on them before other players are willing to, I want to be rewarded or punished for that decision. So I find it's cheap, and I think the intention behind point buy is to try to eliminate captains with bad judgment calls from making bad teams, or to eliminate cheating or unfairness. No super teams, but also no teams that are like way underranked. But another part of it is I think that certain distributions in a point buy are better than others. Like at the St. George random draw, at St. George point buy tournament, a team that invested heavily in the middle pack type of players were able to have a much more solid foundation, as opposed to the teams that took the very top end, most expensive players and then had to suffer on the bottom end. Having that middle um, seems to be more rewarding. And the nature of it is that you're always going to have some teams that have to buy the top end players and some teams that have to do the bottom end players, or the middle players. So I don't think it's inherently that fair, and I think it's easy to take advantage of. But I haven't gone out and proven it. If they ever do a point buy, and I'm going, I'd like to try to prove that I'd like to prove it's done by building a super team. Another one that is incredibly common, usually the standard to be honest, is the snake or linear draft. So linear draft is blatantly unfair. We just go in order, Captain 1 picks all the way down to Captain 6, then Captain 1 goes again down to 6. Captain 1's going to have a significant advantage over Captain 6. Every player that they pick is going to have been picked 5 slots before Captain 6's player. So that's blatantly unfair. The way they solve that is they do a snake draft. Captain 1 goes first, go down. Captain 6 goes first, goes down. And you're supposed to offset. I had the advantage in round 1, but then you have the advantage in round 2. Where are the skill drop-offs? Which rounds matter the most to get that advantage? I think snake drafting is generally pretty fair. But I want to give 2 alternatives to that I think may be both more fair for different reasons. So the first one is an auction draft. Auction drafting is where the captains all get 100 fake dollars, and you get to spend that $100 on your team through an auction. So the way that this is super fair is that auction drafts allow every captain to have access to every player. It just depends on how badly you want the players. You can get the players you want until you run out of money, essentially. So I actually walked through an auction draft real quick. Sorry, I messed up the format here. So if we were doing a draft, here are the captains, here are the eligible players. Notice I really simplified players by tier. So you have commander, heavy, scout, ammo, medic. Under each player's name, you have their site, so you can tell what site they're from. I think this is just, Mischief's little fake world. These are all fake players. They don't exist. But, right off the bat, the only S tier player on the board, we start with a bid of 25, goes up to 30, 35, 40, all the way up to sold at 50. No one wants to blow half their budget except for the Star Lords, so there you go. And then we keep going, and I actually play out this whole thing. I took a few hours just to see how fair would it actually be. So the interesting thing is that as teams begin to form, certain positions, certain levels of play at different positions become scarce on the board. As you can see, there's only so many left halfway through here or a third through here. And the captains are starting to think, okay, well, I got these positions. I'm going to put them in these spots. People are running out of money. We get down to, at the very last, Star-Lords can have any player they want. They got 31. Scorpions have 0, so they're going to literally get the last available player no matter what. So I kind of played it out, and it does finish. Yeah, and then we get these results. And what I noticed is that you definitely had an interesting variety. What I mean is it's not that every team has a top player and then goes down the list to a bottom player. Some of the teams have some definitely look better than others. The Laser Squad has one top tier player and then a bunch of middle tier players. They don't have anybody really pushing super hard except for at those top levels, except for the one player. And then you look at the Scorpions, they got 2 S tier players and an A tier player, but then it's a pretty drastic drop off after that. So there's more opportunity for variety in an auction draft for sure. And I made a little scoring system just to test it. It's not very accurate or anything. It's just, an S tier player at that position is worth 5 points. A is 4, C is 2, and F is 0. So as you can, something interesting about drafting is like the whole point of it is that you have to make determinations about a player's value based on your opinions. And you might know, like, well, players gain or lose value based on what kind of tournament is this, what kind of role are they playing, who are they playing with. We make a whole video about this. I made it with Odin's Fist about evaluating players. And so that's part of the fun of drafting is you're trying to get the most value where you possibly can. For example, like I think Star Lords are likely to win this tournament, and it's because they had built this incredible team up top, and with their final pick, they got a C tier medic, where most of the players in that tier are D or F at every position. Um, this one in this one particular role, Void Spectre is going to shine and be able to provide extra value, even though they were the final pick of the draft. Meanwhile, like Skyhawk and Astroman are D tier at their position, or Darkstar is a C tier scout down here. So distribution is it's a little uneven. Definitely, Star Lord's our favorite. Laser Squad, I tried something fun when I was drafting for them. I just tried to get all Berlin players, so that's going to be where this tournament's being held, and they're going to get a full home side advantage, which will be interesting to think about. And then certain players had bad drafts, and they're struggling in other areas. So that's auction draft. Now I just want to talk about snake drafting. So I actually do a snake draft here, and this was much. One advantage is that it was much quicker to do a snake draft. But after we get to the third round, I actually play out the same draft in two different outcomes. I play it out one where we keep doing regular snake, and one with a third round reversal, which I'll explain when we get there. So we have our captains. I just went like, they go in order, Star Lords first, then down to Unicorns in the final. So they're all drafting players. I just tried to build out the team the best I thought I would do at each situation. So then it goes Unicorns back up to Star Lords. And so everyone's got an A or an S tier player at every position so far. At least where they've put the players, everyone's packing that level of play at whatever position. Now, and you look, there's no A tier players left. There's no A's anywhere. No one can play any position at an A tier now. So that resource has completely dried up. And I note that even though Snake Draft doesn't allow you to choose any player you want at any time, you do get choices. And so at 2.5, one thing to note, like this player was choosing between Reaper and A tier Scout, or 7th Library and A tier Resupply, and they got to make a choice. I'd rather have the A tier Scout than the A tier Resupply, but you could have gone the other way, especially if you were looking at the board and you noticed, well, I'm going to have the second pick. I can guarantee get one of these B tier Scouts and fill them in. There's lots of strategy and choice in a snake draft. It's just you're often banking on mistakes of the other team. That's part of the game. So no A tier players left in any position. We keep going. This is how it would look if we continued right back down the row. So Star Lords would start the third round and Unicorns would end it. But third round reversal is where we would do the first two rounds like normal, and then we flip it a second time. We allow the last team to go first twice in a row, starting in the third round. So in this situation, we allow the Unicorns to go first again, and the Star Lords to go last again, which allows the Unicorns to get Tim, a player who is full solid B across the board, and Star Lords end up picking up a B tier Scout who is C and D in some other positions. So still relatively similar in terms of this made up scenario. Obviously, if we play this out with real players, it would be a bit different. And then here's the regular draft with round 5. Sorry, that's weird. So 4th round and 5th round, 3rd round reversal. Anyway, I got the finals right here. So it keeps playing out with that. Essentially, you give the Unicorns a slight advantage by starting from the 3rd round with a reversal. And here's the teams that you end up with if you do it like normal. So the Star Lords, they end up with a team with C tier all across the board as a minimum. 2 S tier players, an A tier and a B tier. The Unicorns, And in this example, I wanted to use, we have Astroman making a comment in a different video that he doesn't like resupply. And he was the last player picked. So the unicorns they had no choice. They had to take Astroman. Something I noted that happened here, because this would be kind of a real life scenario. If Astroman is not a great player and he doesn't want to play resupply, I have to put him on scout. Meaning that Nova, who is a B tier scout but a D tier resupply, literally has to go down to resupply. Instead of giving up any of these other positions, it's like, well, shoot, that really messes up my team. It takes my scout from a B to a D and no improvement at the medic position regardless. If you were really trying to win, you would need to force Astroman to play medic just to get that B tier scout back on the field. But Star-Lords are looking really strong. I think they generally get the advantage, but the case could be made for any of them. If we do a third round reversal, here's the outcome. The unicorns end up with that higher floor. They get all the C tier players, and Star-Lords, they have to deal with that situation up at the end, having to put Astroman on scout. But let's see, at the best, they would have been able to get a C tier scout and Darkstar. They end up with a D tier scout and Astro Man. And yeah, it's hard to play it all out. But ultimately, when I do that scoring, it's more even on the third round reversal by a lot. The widest margin is a 19 and a 21. So that's kind of insane that that happens at all. The teams all look pretty even, and maybe that's just the nature of a 6-man roster in Space Marines 5. The third round reversal allowing more strength in the middle rounds as opposed to the strength on the very top end might be just that important. Whereas with the snake draft, you all get some pretty strong teams, 22, 21, 20, but then the unicorns get a 16. Like, that's how bad the drop off is for that last place team if you already are starting at a disadvantage, having a B tier player as your captain. Yeah. And again, this is all like a simulation, so it's not real. It's not necessarily going to reflect how the actual draft would go in real life, because every draft would be unique in context. But just comparing them all, like third round reversal seems like the most even results, and the auction draft was still pretty fair too. And you could argue that auction drafts allow for more equality of access to all the players. I just think it's also harder. I think every captain should have to do at least a mock draft to get an idea of, oh, that's how quickly my budget can go, or oh, I shouldn't have spent that much on that player. Get some ideas of what you should spend on players to get a good match team. But yeah, this is me ranting. So I hope you all enjoyed this talk, and I hope you go out and play some laser tag. At the end of the day, it's all just a game. People are people. We're here to have fun. We're here for competition too. And when it comes to competition, well, selfishly, I just think drafting is a really fun part of the game, and I like the competitive nature. People get upset. If you are playing in a tournament and we do a snake draft and you wind up on the unicorns here with the 16, you would be upset. You'd be so mad. You would have had no control over this, and you would have wished they had mandated more fair teams. So yeah, I get it. I get people don't always like drafts, but yeah, I think if you're gonna draft, here's how you should do it. Yeah. Leave a comment below if you have any thoughts on this. Check out more laser tag videos here on my channel, and I'll see you all around. Bye.